All right, welcome in. Cube Show podcast, college football podcast that comes to you on Sundays now. Yeah, we're back here on Sunday again. Feels like a regular thing. We had the preview edition brought to you by Prize Picks before the weekend. Didn't go great. And we'll have that for you this upcoming weekend as well. And then the following weekends, plural, leading up to the national championship game. Prize Picks going to bring you that 4-part series leading into every episode. But, you know, the regular Sunday episode brought to you by Wickles Pickles, wickedly delicious. We're just going to recap the 4 playoff games. We'll get back to some portal talk probably next week. A couple teams having good portal seasons. Ole Miss having a good portal season. LSU crushing it in the portal. Auburn having a good portal season. A couple of teams having a couple ugly losses as well, and not really sure about how they're going to be able to stockpile some guys to take the places of who they're losing. We have plenty of time to get to that. We want to focus in on some of the live games and some what happened over the weekend. So we get our 12-team college football playoff round 1. The sites were incredible. Columbus, magnificent. South Bend, unreal. Happy Valley looked great. I thought all of it just looked the way it was supposed to, felt the way it was supposed to. Probably wish we would have had more night games, but obviously you got to stagger these things somehow, some way, and just not really the way that it was going to be able to go with that triple header on Saturday. Let's start with Friday night. Indiana at Notre Dame. I kind of convinced myself during the week that Indiana could go win this football game because of some of the skill that they had, the RPO nature in which that they operated would be able to negate the Notre Dame defensive line. Well, I wasn't necessarily on point there. This was a game that Notre Dame controlled. This is a game Notre Dame dominated, even though statistically the numbers don't really look that way. I think they got Indiana into what they wanted them to get into and what they wanted them to be, and Indiana just couldn't make anything happen. I charted the throws downfield for Indiana. I'm not 100% sure where I put my notes, but it was, I think they had 6 throws down the field that they had one-on-ones, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 throws down the field in one-on-one situations that they didn't complete. I think they hit 3. And so you're talking about you're 3 for 10 basically on one-on-one throws down the field. That tells me that Notre Dame secondary had an elite game. They played big time. Middle of that, Notre Dame defense was phenomenal. We knew the defensive line was good. We knew those guys could play. Riley Mills, big 99 for Notre Dame. He was a menace on this defensive line for the Fighting Irish, just striking, shedding, forcing runs to be turned a little bit too early, sort of denting the pocket. Notre Dame did a nice job batting balls down. They did a nice job of forcing Rourke to move around a little bit in the pocket. And I didn't think Indiana was really comfortable the entire game. I did think it felt to me like a little bit of an arrogant game plan by Indiana, sticking with kind of what got you there and then sticking with that really throughout the course of the game. You never really felt things shift once it wasn't working. They got lighter boxes to run into. The problem was Xavier Watts, 0, and other DBs were filling so quickly, the numbers game was immediately negated that you had when you snapped the football. So if that's the case, you have to attack that position down the middle of the field, and that's what I don't think Indiana ever did. Never really went at that. Didn't feel like they moved the pocket as much. Didn't feel like they leaned on the screen game as much. But the reality is they didn't block well on the perimeter. They didn't have a great day blocking up front, and Notre Dame tackled like madmen. There just were not a lot of plays where you saw Indiana players running through Notre Dame tacklers. It just didn't happen a lot. A lot of the screens on the perimeter that Indiana did at least try a couple of times, you had a corner just run around or run through a wide receiver or tight end stalk block, and he's there making the play. Or you try to run the little delayed pitch, and you get a nice seal on the end. Well, here comes the rover, here comes a safety down or a corner over, and they're just making the play in the backfield. Notre Dame tackled extremely well. It was absolute clinic tape on how the second and third level of a defense need to fit the run. Because like I said, the box numbers were light in what you should run into. And that defensive line kind of held on to some double teams a little bit longer, didn't let offensive linemen climb up to those backers, didn't let them get out up on the third level ever. And that's what allowed everybody else to be able to come down and make those plays. It was a great performance by Notre Dame's defense. Jack Kaiser, 24, had a really nice game. Derek Bowen, 34, linebacker run through. knocking guys around, batting balls down. I thought he had a really nice game. I thought 30 off the edge. Bryce Young, the freshman, had a couple really nice pass rush reps. Hated to see 99 go down at some point in that game. Riley Mills, going to have him against Georgia. He means too much. He's too big, too stout, does too much inside. And he's a freaking problem. RJ Oben did some good things off the edge. Howard Cross was effective inside, but really it was the defensive line allowing everybody else to go make plays. And those secondary players, when they were challenged down the field, they made the stops. They got it done. Offensively for Notre Dame, Jeremiah Love, the big 98-yard touchdown run, longest run of the year for Notre Dame. And especially when you hit that one right after Indiana catches a little bit of momentum after the pick and they drive down. You get the stop, and then that's where you're going to go. Some questionable calls by Cignetti in the game. Punting. You heard him after the game talking about, we weren't moving the ball and didn't want to put our defense in that spot. And it's kind of like, man, you got to press to try to win the game. And I feel like a lot of people felt the same way of just, what are we doing? How does that take place? Jeremiah Love, 8 for 108. Jadarian Price, 11 for 32. Notre Dame goes 35 carries, 193 yards. Riley Leonard was great with his legs by design, scrambling, and then just moving around in the pocket off platform. I mean, he had a couple of really close throws where he was about to take a hit or he was kind of being pulled down. There was one that he just kind of dumped over to, I think it was a tight end. I'm not sure who. It might have been Aeneas Williams that he hit, and he's getting hit and trying to take it down, and he just quickly flips it out. There's another that he was getting hit on an out route. The one deep shot touchdown, the deep post, I mean, he knows he's taking a hit. The guy's got a free run at him. He hangs in there after he slides to his left, throws the ball up, perfect shot right in the breadbasket, touchdown. I thought he just worked and managed and operated the offense in a very, very good manner. He felt like he knew where to be, where to go with the ball, when to get it out. And he took almost no unnecessary risks in this game. If you go back and watch it, watch the amount of balls that it felt like Indiana even had a chance to defend or intercept. Almost none. Like the total opposite of a couple other teams that we're going to be talking about, mainly SMU and Tennessee, which it felt like every ball almost had the chance to be intercepted. So he made great decisions. I thought it was a great game plan they put together for him. And it wasn't a dominant performance really on the ground. You had the one big run, and then it was just a lot of lean. Outlet throws, check downs, take the free grass, and we'll be good to go. And then Indiana, defensively, it was a lot of what we kind of thought it was going to be, a lot of the high risk, the movement. And that did open some things up, and that helped them make a few plays. I thought for Indiana, one guy in particular that had a really nice game was defensive end number 6. I think it's Michael Kamara. And a couple of guys up front did some good things individually, but still, it's like we talked about. There was jumping gaps. There was trying to play underneath and over the top of blocks, not necessarily fitting the run exactly the way that needed to be done. And the pass rush was just inconsistent. There's a lot of times that Riley had just time to sit back there in the pocket, survey, look, dump it to the tight end, check it down to the back. And you can't give him that kind of time. Not against an offensive line that has been a little bit hit and miss this year. That Notre Dame offensive line showed up. They looked fantastic in this game, got a good push at times, great in pass pro. I thought they played physical. I thought they got after that group. Like it felt like they had a chip on their shoulder in this game, and they came with a little something extra. So 27-17, Notre Dame gets the win. They get to 12-1, and they'll move on to face Georgia in the Sugar Bowl. Going to be a lot of fun. It was just a struggle fest for Rourke in Indiana. They were 4 of 12 on third down, 215 yards through the air, 63 on the ground. Both teams had one turnover. There was only one difference in penalties. So, I mean, this was Notre Dame basically taking this game, and I felt like they got it into the style. Once they got that early lead, you knew it was trouble for Indiana because Notre Dame could sit back and play their game, and that was going to be it. It wasn't going to be a lot that they could do about it after that. All right, so then we go to Austin, Texas. The Longhorns get the win over Clemson, 38-24. Didn't spend a ton of time up with my friends at Wickles Pickles a little bit earlier. Check for them in your grocery store. If they don't have them, ask them why. You can go to wicklespickles.com, have them drop ship to get some gear, hats, aprons. They even have the pickleball paddles. You can go order from wicklespickles.com. They are delicious. We snack on them. We love them. We've got them here in the house. Go check them out for yourself. All right, 38-24, Texas gets this win. I didn't leave this game quite as confident about Texas as some other people did. I mean, listen, it's a nice win. I thought Cade Klubnik had a great game, 26 of 43, 336, 3 touchdowns and a pick. The running yards were just 13 for 5, but he did have to leave the pocket a little bit. He was pressured some, and that's really where the difference is with this Texas team from maybe last year or other years is really what they have off the edge. I mean, they just have guys that can collapse the pocket with speed, with power, with twitch, with flexibility off the edge, and they haven't had the depth at that position like they have this year. They made his life difficult, but he hit some shot plays down the field. TJ Moore, 9 for 116, had a couple of nice throws to Burning Stool. He had 4 for 69. Antonio Williams, 4 for 66. So they kind of got theirs through the air. And the one big questionable call that I had was the 4th down. When you go for it and you don't punt, you're right there almost at midfield, and you're just thinking, man, like this is really good field position. And I think it was a 17-point game at that time. You're thinking if Clemson goes down here and scores, you're cutting it to a 2-score game, and they'd have a little bit of momentum. And then they did go down and score, and you're thinking, wow, this thing's got a chance to get tight here. Some Texas fans, I'm sure, getting a little bit nervous, but they put their foot on the gas and they finished that football team. Quinn Ewers, 17 of 24, 202, a touchdown and a pick. I mean, had a small handful of bad throws in this game, not even terrible throws really in this game. The interception right off the shoulder pads, it's tipped and deflected and picked off. I thought he was accurate, deliberate, knew where he needed to get with the football. Clemson D-line did cause a few problems. Remember, we talked about some of that slide protection where they're gapping over. Clemson had some disruptors that could get inside and be problematic like that. And I thought Peter Woods did that a couple of times. I thought Barrett Carter had a couple of rushes where he helped out and did it a little bit. Trey Williams had 2 sacks. He was able to squeeze through some. So they had the recipe down as how to do it. The problem was when they got that penetration going, that's when Texas countered with some of the zone scheme. And I'm just going to tell you right now, Quintravian Wisner, the way he squeezes through the hole, like his patience, and then it doesn't look like much. And he'll just burst right through there and cut north and south. And all of a sudden, he's 5 yards down the field when it looks like you got the thing fit up pretty well. The zone scheme was working for Texas in this game. 48 carries, 292 yards. Jaden Blue goes 14 for 146. It's the third group of Texas running backs to have 2 go for over 102 rushing touchdowns in a game in the history of the program. So what they did going for 146 and 110, both rushing for 2 touchdowns, that hadn't happened a lot in the history of Texas football. Jaden Blue was great. They were both great out of the backfield as well. Blue 2 for 31. Weiser had 2 catches out of the backfield. Gunnar Helm, great in this game. We talked about the tight ends, what a big weapon they were going to have to be, how much they were going to have to help with the pass rush, with the run game, and then getting out in space. And Gunnar Helm's gotten so good with that run after the catch. It was his primary focus in the offseason, and you can see it paying off for him. But he's such a nice safety valve for Quinn Ewers in this offense. I thought Texas did a good job with some of the misdirection stuff. You saw a nice little version of different counter plays. I mean, it was cool to see the way that they were working that defense over. Didn't have to do a ton down the field because they had a lot of the motion and the intermediate and the quick throws going to where they weren't going to let Sark wasn't going to let that defensive line dominate that game. And he knew good and well that he had to circumvent that. And once he had them teeing off a little bit, feeling good about themselves, they started hitting them with the zone schemes, and the Texas running backs essentially took over. I thought Sark had a nice plan. I thought he knew what he wanted to do. Defensively, you did see a couple of things down the field that might concern you a little bit for this team moving forward. But I also thought the pass rush, when it had to get there, became effective later. Bill Norton had a couple nice pass rush reps. Barron Sorrell, who can be inside, outside, he had a sack, a couple nice pass rush reps. Ethan Burke was in the backfield just a little bit. And that's what I love about this group, that versatility that they offer. Sorrell and Burke can go in and out. You've got guys like Bill Norton that can fill it up from the inside, and Vernon Broughton, and be able to get into the backfield. So they don't have to have one guy dominate up front. They have different body types, different skill sets in which they can hit you with. And then you still have Colin Simmons and Trey Moore off the edge that are going to give you speed and athleticism and be problematic. Bend up, big stop down by the sideline or by the goal line. I thought he had a nice game. All in all, I thought it was a pretty good game. Colin Simmons had the interception off the tip, but it's just a couple of plays down the field that worry you a little bit. And we've asked the question before, how truly tested is this Texas secondary? I think it's a fair question. I think Johnny Barron's had a hell of a year, and I think Taft's had a great year. He had made a couple big plays late to kind of put the nail in the coffin on this game. But you just wonder, how many teams have they played that can truly live there down the field with real athletes and a quarterback that can really deliver it? They just haven't seen a ton of it, and a lot of that is because what that defensive line's been able to do. Either way, impressive win at home, great environment there, and you got to feel good about your situation now if you're Texas, because that was a massive win, and one now where you'll go on and play Arizona State, totally different style football team, ton of gap scheme run, offensive line that gets back after you. You get this big, wide, physical, 320-pound center. Offensive line is going to be moving around. They're going to try to get double teams on you. They're going to hit you from different angles. We'll preview it later this week. We'll have that one for you. But got to feel good if you're a Texas fan with what you're able to do getting that win. All right, so then we go to Happy Valley. Penn State 38-10. One of the two really ugly ones of the weekend. And this thing got off the rails early. So if you're SMU, how are you going to stay in this game? What kind of game did you want it to be? You probably didn't want it to become a slow it down, grind it out type football game, which is what Penn State would have welcomed. And they'll sit there and they'll put the tight end, take direct snaps and run it right at you and give it to the two big talented backs and be able to burn you there. Don't let Drew Allard do a lot. Let him utilize some of the intermediate throws. And that's what it really became, because SMU shot themselves in the foot multiple times early on. Kevin Jennings, two of the worst picks you'll ever see in your life, SMU quarterback, just staring down the receivers, bad decisions. He's rolling out early on a 4th and 1, decides to throw it to the tight end in the end zone. All he's got to do is tuck it, put his head down, run. He picks up a first down. You got a whole new set of downs there inside the 20. So just little mistakes like that really added up quickly. But I give the Penn State defense credit. They were in his face a lot. The pass rush was ferocious from this Penn State defense. And Dominic DeLuca had himself a game. 2 interceptions. The second one, he tips it straight up to himself and takes it back for a touchdown. I mean, he was on fire in this game. 5 tackles, had half a sack, had the touchdown. This was a Penn State defense that sort of lived up to the hype of what they were capable of doing. I mean, you got 2 pick sixes, you got 3 interceptions total, you had 3 sacks in the game, 11 tackles for loss in this game. And it was one of the things that we thought going in, an athletic front against an offensive line that wasn't going to be able to blow you off the ball and was going to have to live with some position blocking, some zone scheme stuff. If you could sort of bust through and find your way through and be problematic early, you were going to be able to have this kind of game. And this is where they were. They dominated this game. I do think, watching it back, that if SMU doesn't make the early mistakes, they could have had some sustained success running the football, because they did get a couple of things going at times. Now, was it going to be a dominant performance? No, but Brashard Smith, 18 for 62. LJ Johnson Jr., 6 for 26. So both of those guys are 3.5 over 4 yards per carry. They found some space at times, and they were able to do some things. But there were a couple defensive linemen up there for, I thought, not just Abdul Carter, but Zane Durant, 28 for Penn State. Thought he did some nice things up front. Thought he had a really nice game. And Devon J. Thomas, 91. He's like the immovable object up there for the Nittany Lions. I mean, he was penetrating. He got off a couple of blocks and helped out on some tackles. I thought he did a really nice job as well. SMU just put themselves in a bad spot. They had to turn into a drop-back football team. It's not who they are. Even with a mobile quarterback, it was just too much. And then I think it just appeared as though Kevin Jennings was rattled early. It didn't feel like he was going to be able to play his way out of that funk. He's running in circles. He's seeing the rush and the pressure before it gets there, trying to move and duck down and go away. It just wasn't going to happen. I will say what I really liked about Penn State's game plan, all the motions, all the shifts, like you got that defensive front misaligned numerous times. Like Colwicky knew, lining up the ways that they did, that they could find that front seven misaligned, and they didn't allow them to dominate the game. Now, you watch Elijah Roberts, number 5 for SMU, he's knocking guys on their ass, like he's getting a pass rush, like he's a problem no matter who he's playing, and he was a problem in this game. but it didn't give those linebackers time to kind of tee off and just go right at everybody and have the impact that they do sideline to sideline. Kobe Wilson and Ahmad Walker still had good games, but it wasn't going to be enough. Obviously, Tyler Warren is one of the best players in college football. He's taking direct snaps. He's blocking DBs into the end zone from 10 yards out. Singleton, Katron Allen, both nice days on the ground. Not as much gap scheme as I thought. They kind of went to some zone stuff and lived there a little bit. I think to sort of maybe to avoid some of the disruption and getting north and south on them. But either way, it started to work. And in similar fashion to kind of what we've talked about before is once Penn State knew that game was there and knew that this was the style game that they were in, I mean, it was a whole different feel for that offense. You knew it was going to be 3 yards in a cloud of dust. But I will say this, Drew Aller, 13 to 22, 127 yards. Excellent job moving around in the pocket. When he needed to scramble, he did. When he needed to move and throw, he did. But similar to what we talked about with Riley Leonard, Drew Aller did not take unnecessary risks, did not try to fit footballs in when he didn't have to. Took checkdowns, took easy throws to tight ends, tucked it and ran a couple of times. A very smart day for the Penn State quarterback. And even smarter, understanding what kind of game you're in. That the only way this team's going to get any life is if we give them some help and we give them the football back. And he didn't do it. So I thought it was a solid performance by him. Statistically, it's not one anybody's going to look at it and say, oh, wow, this kid blew everybody out of the water. But it just showed me the kind of football player he is and how football savvy he is by understanding where they were in the game, what kind of game it was, and don't give the other team life. Take the easy throws, take the free grass, take the free access. Let's just live there, a couple yak yards, and then here we'll go. SMU did have their chances down the field. Had a couple shot plays that they didn't come down with. Had a couple drops on the day. And one of the worst tackling performances of the season for that team. A lot of diving at ankles. A lot of guys who had an opportunity on the perimeter to get a screen down, don't. Now it's 8 yards, it's 12 yards, it's 7 yards, as opposed to normally you're getting that ball carried down after a 1 or 2 yard gain. A lot of backs at the line of scrimmage. Contact, chance to go down, don't make that play, it goes for first down yardage. It was a rough tackling performance for SMU. By far the worst tackling performance of this weekend that I saw. And it's not like them. Those linebackers are active. Those defensive ends are pretty solid. They're ferocious, got strong hands. They don't miss a ton of tackles. We thought the penalties were what's going to get this team in trouble, if anything. And it turns out they couldn't get ball carries to the ground. That was one thing outside of the offense sort of self-imploding early that I thought was a massive letdown for how SMU played in this game. But it's a nice win for Penn State. 12-2 on the season now, 100th win for James Franklin. And they're going to get Boise. And I think it's a really good matchup for Penn State offensively. I'll be interested to see them defensively because there are some times, like I said, where it looked like SMU maybe found some things in the run game. They just couldn't live there at that point. But make no mistake, too, we'll talk about it more later in the week. This is not a dominant Boise State offensive line. Ashton Genty's dominant. He's a takeover guy, but it'll be a good matchup because of that, and we'll spend some time on it later in the week. Finally, Ohio State rails Tennessee. I'll be the first one to admit it. I was wrong on this game. I was wrong on Ohio State. I completely whiffed on what that team was up front on both sides of the ball because the offensive line that showed up in this game was from Columbus, Ohio. And they kicked some ass in this game. They got the movement. They pushed people around. They didn't allow the pass rush. It was a really impressive performance by that group. Specifically, center left guard had some good push multiple times in this game. The Tennessee defensive line had very little impact on this game. I thought the Tennessee defensive line would dominate this game. You've switched out your left tackle, your normal center's out, who won the Remington Award. I just thought that the interior of that defensive line, how they've dominated this year with some of the edge defenders, it would be a big problem because you were still going to read some things with your quarterback, but you had athletic edge guys that could get back into the backfield and be a problem. But Chip Kelly was masterful by not letting that happen. And how he didn't let that happen were gap scheme runs and about 17 variations of counter with motion, with splitters, with movement, with pullers going the opposite direction. Now, some of it, I do think Travion Henderson had a couple of really nice cuts on counter plays that were supposed to hit left, and he kind of cuts it back to the right, and then made some really good things happen. I thought Quinshon had some good runs. Travion 10 for 80, 2 touchdowns. Quinshon was 10 for 34 and 2 touchdowns. Ohio State runs 33 times, 156 yards. They rushed for 4 touchdowns too. Same situation as Penn State, as Notre Dame. They knew where this game was early, and they were able to throttle back. And I thought they did. The difference was they took shots down the field and they hit them, because Jeremiah Smith was a maniac in this game. This team absolutely abused man coverage. He was the main one, but it wasn't just him. Tennessee could not cover this football team. And kind of like what we asked about Texas, although I do have more confidence in the Texas secondary, the Tennessee secondary may have not been tested enough because of that defensive line and how good they've been. And Ohio State proved that if that was your theory, it was right and it was real. McElroy told me, he's like, I see some holes in that Tennessee secondary, and I think Ohio State's going to be able to get them there. And they used Jeremiah Smith down the field in some man-to-man matchups where they knew they had the advantage, and they took advantage of him. He went and got the football, and he's a friggin' dynamo. Like, he is him, Ryan Williams. I mean, take your pick of the freshman receivers all over the place this year in college football. There's a bunch of them. I don't know how you put anybody ahead of him. I really don't. I mean, I don't know how you say that you would take a guy over that kid, because he was incredible. G. Scott, really nice game at tight end for Ohio State. Couple good catches, helped out up front. They didn't have to grind things out because the game was over, and Tennessee had to turn to throwing the football, and that thing was, out of their hands at that point anyway. But I do think that the game plan that Chip Kelly put together, with all the movement, making those Tennessee linebackers think, forcing those Tennessee linebackers to take one false step this way, and the play was going to hit the opposite way, and then a lot of high percentage throws for Will Howard. A lot of backs out of the backfield, tight ends in the flat. He got some stuff down the field, of course, but they made sure that it was going to be a one-on-one, and he had confidence with who he was going to and what that matchup looked like. They hit their shots down the field, but they had advantageous matchups at the same time. And the other part is the offensive line held up. He had time in the pocket. I mean, Will Howard tucked it and run 3 or 4 times, but it was not because he was under duress the majority of this game. Unlike Nico Iamaleava, I don't even put the 14 to 31 on him, man, because he's getting hit, he's getting chased, he's got guys in his face. It was a rough day for the right tackle. It was a rough day really for both tackles. Jack Sawyer was amazing in this game. Best game I've seen him play. And I'm not going to act like I've been super dialed into every one of his games, but I'll go back and check the film on most Ohio State games every week. He was a maniac in this game. Thought Tyleik Williams had a really good game inside. JT had another big game. We've seen him have a few of those. He was in the backfield. He had the hand swipes going on the Tennessee tackles and being able to get to the quarterback quickly. Tennessee tackles, I thought, did a poor job gauging depth against the Ohio State rushers, because they turned and went to run the rushers by the pocket when they were already past the tackles and had the direct angle to the quarterback. So you can't run someone by the quarterback when they're already making that turn into the QB. When they get level with the QB is when you want to run them past the pocket and the quarterback can step up and deliver that football. The Tennessee tackles had a bad feel for where that was. I don't know why that was for this game, other than just those pass rushers were probably better than they suspected. And some of the sets had some flaws in how they set those guys in this game. But the Ohio State front was just great. I thought they played their rear ends off. I thought Cody Simon Zero played his rear end off. Tennessee couldn't separate. Tennessee couldn't get open. They saw a lot of man coverage. I didn't see as many man beaters as I needed. Ohio State got out of it a little bit, but mostly they lived there, and Tennessee could not get open. Shot plays down the field, couldn't go get them. Almost every ball, it felt like, and it wasn't every ball. I know it wasn't. But let's say out of 31 passes that Nico threw, I'm going to say I'm pretty damn confident that 25 of them were into some sort of coverage, were dangerous throws, or throws that were not likely to be completed because of how they were being defended. I mean, it was just, it was a clinic day for the secondary of Ohio State. They had 9 passes defended. And Greg and I have actually laughed about this in the morning before, is how pass defended in the stat book, in the stat sheet, is something that's always dumb, because you'll see a guy knock down 3 passes in a game and he gets no credit for it. But this 9 that Ohio State had in the box score, I probably feel like that's pretty accurate because every pass seemingly had a defender right there on them. Caleb Downs had a nice game. I mean, it was just run through the list of Ohio State defenders. They played great. And they got Tennessee out of their game plan. Tennessee didn't lean on the run. No Dylan Sampson hurt. But I'm going to be honest with you. There's no excuse for how this thing went. Not losing Dylan Sampson, not the weather, none of that. Because the weather was supposed to be something that played into your hands to go force sort of a ground and pound football game, but you couldn't get a push and you couldn't open up space for the run. Ohio State gave them the run looks. They had the right numbers in the box. But once again, Ohio State just decided to play half the field in the alley most of the time. So they took an outside linebacker or nickel, and they split the difference between those really wide receivers out there in the tackle box. And when they needed to come back in and run support, they were there and wasn't able to let that thing get going. The other part is when they did spit it out to the perimeter, they weren't able to find anything. Yards after catch for Tennessee, I know I wrote this down because it was egregious. Because I looked it up earlier. I think it was like 15 and 13 yards for like 2 different receivers. I mean, it was like 41 yards after the catch, but it's more when you go through the individuals of how it looked. Peyton Lewis had 15 yards after catch, and Brennan Staley had 13 yards after catch. Nobody else had more than 7. So those quick throws, those quick access throws, which Ohio State, gave a little bit of space on and didn't have the numbers committed to, you couldn't turn those into explosive plays. You almost couldn't generate any explosive plays. It was just a rough day. It was an off day. Played like shit, looked bad, and Ohio State played great. I give Ohio State all the credit. Like I said, I didn't see this one going this way. I thought Tennessee was a more physical football team. I was wrong. I can admit that. I'm going to be wrong again. I've been wrong before. Some analysts out there are perfect and have nailed every game they've ever talked about. I am not that guy and never will be. So I think it sets up a hell of a weekend. Ohio State's going to get Oregon again. We know when they met before, Oregon took that one 32-31. It's going to be fun. I think the second round matchups are going to be a blast. I think Notre Dame, Georgia, with the quarterback situation at Georgia, could make that one really interesting. Now, Notre Dame needs to be healthy and they have a little bit of extra time to do it. I think contrast in style, sort of. Texas, Arizona State could be really interesting. Penn State, Boise, for a couple of reasons, could be fun. But we'll talk about those later in the week. Like I told you, Prize Picks is going to sponsor us doing a preview show into college football playoff weekends all the way through. So I'll have that out for you on Thursday, I think, depending on the calendar, which I have not paid attention to. So Christmas Day will be Wednesday. So yeah, we'll get that out for you on Thursday, and you'll be able to get our thoughts on what we think is going to go on this weekend. Hopefully a little bit better than last weekend because we didn't hit Tennessee, Ohio State, and we went on a limb with Indiana, and that one didn't happen. Don't forget about our friends at Blue Delta Jeans either. Custom fit denim, premium denim, the best pair of jeans you will ever own, ever in your life. Blue Delta Jeans. I've got a pair. I wear them all the time. You can dress them up, wear them to a Christmas party with our Sunday school group Friday night, or you can go casual wherever you want. They can digitally custom fit these for you too. Last minute Christmas gift, Blue Delta gift card. Go check that out. Go get them, BlueDeltaJeans.com. Tell them you heard about them right here on Cube Show. Please like, please subscribe. Leave your comments about how much you hate me. Ohio State fans have been in my mentions for 24 hours now. It's a lot of fun, even though they think I'm terrible at my job. That's great. Get back to yours. We'll see you next week.